Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today's card I'm going to be making an iris card. I think I've got the name right. I keep getting it muddled up with another one I've got for this week. And I actually got this card file from Whitlock on her channel and blog and shop, sorry. And basically you have a back panel, a middle one which has got this fan thing, and then the front one which has got a hole in it. And obviously the one in the middle also has a hole in it, and you'll see why. So the back panel, I've actually already heat embossed my sentiment on there. I thought I'd save a bit of time and do all the die cutting and the stamping and embossing and all that sort of thing, and so that I could show you how this all works. And so this is going to be a longer video, so hopefully you'll stay to the end. But it was the first time I was making this card. I'd never done one of these before, so yeah, there's quite a few pieces, but it's actually not that bad once you get into it. So there you can see my heat embossed sentiment, and I just did that in some white embossing powder. I used a Stampin' Up embossing powder. Now this is just a plain white cardstock. This isn't watercolor, this isn't anything, it's not Bristol Smooth or anything like that. And I'm going to use my Twisted Citron and some mowed lawn and then some black soot. And in the end, I absolutely love this. Now I've done this a few times now with this cardstock on some previous videos, and they actually turned out really, really, really well. The previous ones I think I used Stampin' Up ink, but for these ones I'm using my Distress ink. I'm obsessed. I like so many people. So and I love how the idea was to get this sort of brighter green in the middle, and then they sort of go darker as you go out. So all I did there was I inked the Twisted Citron and then the mowed lawn around it. In the end you'll see that I will go around each panel, including the middle one, which you're not going to see, but you might see from the side, and I actually go around it on with some black soot as well in the end. Then you have these 4 sausages, is what we're going to call them, and they're well known in the industry as sausages. And there's 4 of them for this particular iris card. So I've just inked all of those in this sort of, as much as I could get to the sort of color wave that's in the middle of the card. And again with this one, which is the top panel, so this is the one you're going to see on the outside. I'm doing the same color wave, so I'm going with my Twisted Citron, then my mowed lawn, and then black soot around the outside. And you can see there's some weird patches on it and it looks a complete mess, and that's okay. It's a Halloween card, so I'm okay with it being totally messed up, but it wasn't quite what I was sort of going for to start with, but it works out really, really well in the end, and I'm chuffed to pieces. And actually I'm trying really hard, and I think this is good for everybody to try and do this. Try and let go a little bit when it comes to making art. That for me is really difficult sometimes. So I've also taken my trusty distress sprayer with some water, and I've also using this pot that now needs refilling with some Ranger Perfect Pearls in Perfect Pearl, so the white one, and I've just splattered that on using the nozzle of the spray just to get some bigger blotches. So here you can see that I've got the panels inked with black soot around the edges of all of them. I just thought actually from the side it probably would look better if they were all inked. So this middle panel, which is the one that looks like it's got a little fan on it, there are some other pieces that I forgot to show in the beginning. So there's these 3 tiny little tab things, and there's also just off to the right, which I've also inked, is the it's like what Laurie calls the Q, and that's also part of this mechanism. You'll also need 4 brads for this. So these little tabs, what you're going to do, you're not going to see them, so I didn't ink them, but there's a score line that you score just where the curve is, and then there's also a curve along the sort of the flatter edge. It's actually a curved rather than a straight edge, and I'm just putting the tape on the longer section, And that curve, if you can just about see that curve there, will actually fit, and I'm going to try and bring you in closer, will actually fit on the curve of the middle circle. And what you're going to do is next to the bottom fan piece or cutout piece, you're going to put that, line it up so that it creates a V shape. So where that little cutout is and where you've stuck that down, there's almost like a V shape, an upside down V. And what you need to do is, the way this panel is sat with the, if you look in the top right hand corner of this panel, there's like a C cut out, and that is like your starting point. So these little fan pieces, if you like, are at what I would say 12, 3, 6 and 9, if you're thinking in terms of a clock. So you're going to put these little tabs are going to go next to the 6 o'clock, the 9 o'clock and the 12 o'clock. You don't want it next to the one that would be on the side, or the 3 o'clock one, on the right hand side of this panel, because it will stop the mechanism from working. You'll basically it just won't work because you won't be able to open and close it. So that's why you put them in a specific spot. So back to starting point where you've got your little C in the top right hand corner. Now you're going to take your sausages, as they're aptly named, and this doesn't matter where you start, but you're going to put that little piece, a little tab I guess, hook it, put it inside and then twist it round so that the inside edge of the sausage lines up with the circle in the center. And then you're going to go around and do the same on all 4 of these and just keep lining them up. It looks a little fiddly, it's not that bad, considering this was the first time I'd ever made one of these, so I was a bit like, you know, all fingers and thumbs kind of thing, but it actually wasn't that bad. This last one you have to lift up the first one to get into that little hole, or where that cutout is. Super easy though. So now they're all there, so I'm going back to my starting point, my little C in the top right, and I'm just sort of getting them mostly in position. Listen to me. Now there are 4 holes on this Q tab, so that's where you ultimately want it, but that's when it's closed. So what you need to do is turn it down so that it looks like a Q, and those 4 holes will then line up with your sausage holes. And the reason you do this, because at the moment this iris is actually, once it's put together, is actually open. So in order to close it, you need to have that, in order for it to show that it's closed with the little handle at the right position, you need to almost start with it open, if that made any sense. But hopefully you can see what I mean here. So now you're going to take those 4 little brads, and you're going to go through the whole of the Q and one of the sausage below. That's all. So I will pick this up and I'll show you what I mean. So it's just gone through the Q and then the first sausage, and those holes will line up, and as you go I just keep finagling just to keep it lined up somewhat, but it will all come together, so don't worry too much. So I'm just going to go around and do that on all 4 of those little guys. Now you'll see that my second to last one, actually the brad breaks, so I have to just get a new one. It's not the end of the world to do that. So I'm just going to get these, and again I just lined it up as I went so that I was so that I knew where I was, if you know what I mean. And also doing that makes lining up the holes a little bit easier as well, because you know that they're in the right sort of position. It's a little easier to actually grab hold of the 2 layers, but it's very easy to put together. It's not difficult at all. So I'm just getting the last one in, and then I went to sort of squash them as flat as possible. That way they're not going to interfere too much. In fact, they shouldn't interfere at all, but if they are flatter, you know, when you open them and they're flat, this is where the brad broke, so I have to get a new one. But the flatter they are, then obviously the less friction between those pieces as you're moving. It'll just move a little bit easier. The other way you could do it, and I might try this next time, is actually put the brad from the other side up, so that the smooth edge of the brad, as long as it's not too bulky a brad, you need maybe mini ones, I mean, these are super mini brads, but I think if you had it the other way around, it might, because of the smooth edge of the brad, it might slide a little easier. You could use a powder tool on all the layers if you wanted to do that too, but honestly this works really well. So, and this is fairly thick cardstock, so I think it's about 300 or 350 GSM, so it's pretty thick cardstock. And you'll see in a bit that I kind of tweak. I'm not tweaking the design because the design is all there, but I just sort of add something in to try and help level things up, just because they are the card is so thick. But this was like a spur of the moment, let's see if this works, and it worked pretty well. So there I've just lined up all my brads, just getting all my layers, just getting them all in the position, and then I will show you how this kind of works. This is basically the iris done. Obviously we're going to finish it properly, but that's basically your iris. So there's the iris closed with the tab at where the C is when it's closed, and then obviously in the Q position is when it's open, which is why you have to do it this way. So now there's those little tabs that we stuck down at 3, 6 and 9. No, at 12, 9 and 6, not at 3, because you will interfere with the handle. And you're only going to put adhesive now on the tops of those. You don't want it anywhere else, otherwise you're basically going to stick the thing together and then it will not move. It won't work and it won't move. So you only want it on just the top of that tab. And what what she does on her, this is her design obviously, but what she shows you how to do is then to put adhesive, very thin adhesive, around the top, left and bottom edge. Again, not on the right hand side where that C's cut out of the piece, because you will then stop the mechanism from being able to move if you stick it together basically. So the right hand side is where you need to leave that free so that handle can move and open and close your iris. So this tape in particular, although it seems to be working pretty well for these projects, is a bit of a pain in the bum because I can't seem to get the stuff off, the backing off, but eventually I do. And like I say, I know this is a longer video, but I hope it helps, because whether you've got this kind of iris or whether you've got some of the other fab designers out there, Lawn Fawn's got their own one in a die cut in a die form. However you've got one, they're really cool to play around with and to make cool projects with, and I love how this turned out. I'm so excited about this. So while I'm finagling with that, I'll talk about the stamp set. I'm using Newton's Nook Spooky Skeletons. That's the stamp set for today. So what you would normally do, like I say, is put the thin tape along the top, left and bottom as it stands at the moment, and then use those sticky bits on those little tabs, and that would essentially hold the whole thing together. It's not that difficult either to make sure those little tabs are down. It's pretty easy to do that. I can't talk. But what I found was, as I was going to do this, I thought, well, it's not, because the center iris bit is quite chunky now because of all those layers of 300 odd GSM card. I decided to use some foam dots. Again, just be careful, you don't want it on the right hand side. You want to keep it all on the top, left and bottom, and not too close to the actual mechanism, because you want that to be able to move freely. Once it's all in place, it won't be so sort of wiggly as it is at the moment. It's because things aren't quite in place. So that's why I decided to put the foam on there, and it actually works. It helped a lot. It kept all of it level. I don't know, I can't remember if I could have probably used something a little bit thicker, but these are Stampin' Up foam dots and they work fine. So again, I'm just going to make sure that all those little tabs are stuck down, well, not stuck down, but are down. And that is essentially your iris. That's it. That cool. That's your iris bit. So now what we're going to do is, I believe, I'm going to now work out where I can put my back panel on, And I want to make sure that I don't get any tape or adhesive where those little gears are, if you like, because that's part of what makes that whole thing move. You don't have to worry about you can go all the way around this time with your tape, as long as it doesn't interfere with those little guys. So I made sure it was open, and that way I knew that it was like at its biggest point, if that makes sense, so that I knew that the tape wouldn't interfere at that point. So now I'm just going to get all this tape off, and I'm going to stick this to the back panel, and you'll be able to see the sentiment through it. And it's so cool. It's so cool. I was so happy that it turned out the way it did. And like I say, this was on normal cardstock. The other thing is, at this point, obviously you can decorate the front, which we'll do, but at this point, the back of the card, this could be the card, and you could just write your sentiment on the back of the card, and that could be what you send in the post. But I decided to put it onto an actual base card. So Newton's Nook Spooky Skeletons. Now, I am in love with this stamp set. I've also used the birch trees and the spooky border fence from Lawn Fawn for this, but I'm in love with this. I didn't know if this was going to work, and I stamped, and I was going to do it in glow in the dark embossing powder, but again I wasn't sure if this was going to work, so I used white on black cardstock. To me, skeletons are white, but they're not really white, but they're off-white. they're like a creamy-ish colour. But I wanted them in white. I didn't want to stamp them in black on white cardstock. I actually wanted them in white. I thought it made more sense. So I stamped and embossed them onto some black cardstock, and then I used my scanning card to see if it would pick it up and cut it out like it would my stamped images. And it did it so perfectly. I was so chuffed. I got like way too excited. Like, people shouldn't get this excited about stamps. No, they should. What am I saying? Anyway, so I got really excited about it because I was chuffed that it actually worked, because I'd taken all that time to stamp and emboss them, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is actually going to cut out. And it cut out so well. So I was really chuffed, and they look so awesome. So I actually think, now that I've done it in white, I actually think it would work with a glow in the dark. So we'll have to try that, and if I do, I will share it, of course. So I had a little plan in my head of where these guys were going to go, and I pretty much used all the stamps, I believe, in the stamp set. So I've got the owl on the branch, and what I did is just make sure that if you've got anything overlapping your center iris, make sure that there's no adhesive there, just in case, especially liquid adhesive. It might get stuck in some of the layers. And of course, weird brain that I have. One of the bats is carrying he's like carting off a rat for dinner. I don't know, my brain. This is what happens. So I've got a couple of bats and 3 rats, 3 bats, an owl, and the cat, and I just thought it worked out so nicely. And it's a silly little scene, but I just love it. I just thought the whole thing just turned out really cool. So also doing the whole keeping the stamping part of it really simple in a sense, because I've just heat embossed in one color. I've not had to color anything in. I've not had to do any of that. And by keeping that part of it simple, I could then take time and show you guys how to do the rest of it. Obviously, if you have a die cut or however that is, you can obviously make it as embellished and as mad as you want. That's completely down to you, but obviously for the purposes of the video, I wanted to keep the main iris part is what I wanted to show you guys. So this is connected card number 2 for this week. Like I said on my blog post from Tuesday, I seem to be having themed weeks. I don't know why, it's just turned out that way. But yeah, stay tuned for the Christmas one on Saturday, because that I'm really chuffed with, really chuffed with. And again, it was something I'd never done before, so but really easy to put together. So I found a lemon lime twist, I believe. yeah, lemon lime twist card base that I had, which is a Stampin' Up card, and it is retired, unfortunately, but it's very similar to the Twisted Citron. So I love it. I'm so gutted it's retired because it's so lovely, and I thought there was a good card base to put on there, and so there you go. I haven't even talked about the actual sentiment. It says rattle my bones. No, rattle your bones. No, don't rattle my bones. My bones rattle enough, thanks. But I thought that had turned out really, really cool. So you've got almost like this green moon in the middle, and then you open it and it goes rattle my bones. So I thought it was quite funny. And there is a little arrow that you cut out as well, which shows the recipient how to use or what to do with the card, because if you're not a crafter, you're not necessarily going to understand this. So hopefully that made some sense. And happy Halloween. We're nearly there. Have a good day, guys. See you soon. Bye.